Hello everybody, Missing Jin here. Welcome to another episode of Mambo Jumbo, that's DJBO. And let me get into a couple of things before we begin. A few quid pro quo, I should say. First of all, I know I've been gone for a long time. I've been trying to figure out what I want to do with this channel, and now I kind of have, but it's different than what I intended. And I like to thank Mr. Lewis of Brain Scratch Commentary fame for giving me the direction I want to go. And basically by berating me. Well, no, I said stuff first, and we got into a little argument, and his fans tagged me, common Twitter, piddle peddle, you know what I mean? So I decided that what I'm going to do is do videos like I did with the Dendara one, where I talk about a certain thing that is on my mind, and I talk about it. And you probably noticed the title of this, and you probably don't understand what I'm saying with it, but first I have a few other announcements too. I'm not doing Let's Plays anymore. I was trying to try doing Let's Plays. I'm going to be changing my banner pretty soon too, to reflect this, but I kind of just can't do Let's Plays anymore. I'm having a job during the week, and then I have a job on the weekends. I really don't have a day off, so the idea of doing these type of videos are much easier for me to actually do. And I'm changing it up to be more of like maybe impression videos, or like something like an impressions of a game. I'm not really a review person. I'm not the biggest type of reviewer type person, so I'm gonna do impressions and stuff like this for now on, at least currently, until I get established or get further out there. You know, I like to talk about these type of things, and I'm trying to stay out of politics, but this one, unfortunately, you're gonna see that it's, well, I'm going right at the heat of the argument on that, but anyway, I thought I would give those little quo there, and so let's get on with the video here. As you can notice, I'm playing the game called XCOM, and more specifically XCOM 2 collection that just came recently on mobile devices, or should I say on Apple devices, and you know what the name of this thing is called. It's called Excommunication with XCOM 2. Okay, so I tried to come up with some fancy titles. Excommunication, if anyone doesn't know, was something that was used back in the days of the Catholic Church, that if you're excommunicated, you are cut off from God, basically. That's not actually the truth, because, you know, I'm a Christian and I knew these type of things, but it was a big deal at the time. And the idea of this is kind of just a joke, in a way, with someone, because of my religious background, my belief, and the idea of how communications have broken down over the course of, you know, our current generation. So excommunication in this case is just kind of a pun, but also kind of a thing about the idea of breakdown communication between different sects of people, and the idea of how these things have happened, at least in my own opinion and from my own observations. So this is, yes, is opinion. This is not exactly warranted science or anything. It's more of just where I'm coming from and what I'm seeing from my own perspective. So, I am not trying to say that this is true or false. Maybe some of it is true, maybe some of it is false. But it's just to come to give my own viewpoint and show you, everyone out there, that this is my viewpoint of a situation. And so, this video is going to be a pretty long one, but there's going to be multiple parts to this. Today we're going to be talking about the idea of communication breakdown in the sense of, because of the current political climate. And I know you're going to say this, oh, but Missing Jin, you said you were going to talk about politics. Well, I'm not talking about politics in the sense of by itself. I'm talking about politics in the sense of, because of it, it's caused communications to break down. And this is kind of how I got into discussion and how I got into what I want to do with this channel with Lewis from Brain Scratch Commentaries. And it was the best of discussions. And you're going to see videos in the back of here. But I'm going to talk about this in the nature of how these parties on both sides, how the idea of that being affecting different facets of our society it's a problematic situation, and it's causing a polarizing division between people. And it's basically what I talk about this time in this video is the idea of those politics. Later on there'll be other communications like with social media and stuff like that. This is kind of more like an overview, but there's going to be other parts to this, and so I'm going to be recording some parts of XCOM to kind of go along with this type of thing. But at this point, what I'm going to be talking about is the idea of these politics. And what I mean by politics in this sense is the political atmosphere. The thing is politics is something you really don't want to talk about in casual conversation. It causes a lot of issues. I mean, there's always the joke out there that says there's two things you don't talk at the dinner table about: the idea of religion and that of politics. Well, considering that I live in a Christian household, we do talk about religion at the dinner table, but politics is still kind of out the window on that. I mean, there's a lot of things, unfortunately, with politics that just cause so much breakdown in communication, the idea of civil unrest, and just the idea of it basically just causing people to break down and argue consistently and just break down the conversation into nothing more than you're bad because you believe this, or you're bad because you believe that, and it just goes back and forth in a roundabout circle, and it really doesn't help anybody. And the fact is that I understand, especially with this election, and especially with the current situations going on currently right now with the COOF and, the George Floyd incident that occurred, that these things have become supercharged to the point of contention. And the thing is that it's always going to be problematic for any side to get any type of word in edgewise, because basically one side will believe this and the other side will believe that. And with how everything is going and the way that people now look at things, it's a very difficult way to try getting people to come to your side, or at least have a civilized discussion about the situation and the circumstances surrounding those circumstances. That's the thing I've noticed. If you talk about something that is not the viewpoint of that person and strays even a little bit away from it, they don't just want to talk to you. They don't want to just say, oh, you have your opinion, I have mine, let's just get on with it. It's more of let's attack people. Let's, my opinion or else. And the thing is, that's not how things work. That's not how this entirety of society works. Society works because people are willing to make compromises. And that's one thing that I've noticed. Compromising does no longer exist. Yeah, compromise, the idea of coming to a common ground, that no longer exists. There's no civility in this argument anymore. It's all about the argument, but there's never a way to come to a conclusion. It's just the arguing part and nothing's being concluded. The only conclusion people come to is that you attack me, I attack you, and basically, because you don't believe in what I do, the conclusion is we're just going to keep on fighting and never come to a type of conclusion on this. Arguments usually are considered now a bad word, because if you're arguing with that person, you don't believe in what I believe in. Therefore, since you don't believe in what I believe in, that means you're my enemy. No, it just means I don't agree with you. But the thing is that that's what it is. It's like, you must hate me, you must hate who I am, you must hate what I believe in, therefore you hate me, and therefore I need to protect myself by attacking you back. And that's not how things need to happen anymore. People have this idea that they need to be the commanding authority, and it's unfortunately a human nature problem. It's not something you could just easily fix and remedy, and thing is, it's gotten much worse with how technology has advanced, the things that we use with technology. I'll go on more to social media in a later video, but this idea of the politics that are being invaded in every aspect of our lives doesn't matter anymore, that it's just something you don't talk about. The problem with it is that in everything that we do, there seems to be some type of agenda in those things. It could be a video game. It could be idea of a TV show. Things that should not have these type of problematic situations happening are now invading the spaces that really should not have these things. And it's basically becoming part of a national pastime of argument and disconcerting problematic issues that arise because of this invasion. And I don't even really know what to say, and the fact is that why do we have to be like this to each other? Aren't we supposed to be the United States of America? Aren't we supposed to be united? We stand? Because last time I checked, the last part of the actual thing I just said was, divided we fall. We are dividing ourselves and falling into the trap of getting into other people's arguments and not actually coming to our own logical conclusions. The problem with it is, I think this is intentional. And I know that people might think this is conspiracy theory, but the thing is that if you don't really have a conflict, people can't rally to one side or the other. And unfortunately, if that doesn't exist, sometimes you need to create that type of rift for it to exist. And the thing is that a lot of times power has a lot to do with this, and the idea of greed and the idea of wanting people to come to your side so you have some type of power and authority over people. And, well, it seems to be kind of going into that direction. I'm not saying there isn't valid conflicts out there, especially since there is definitely problems out there. I'm not saying, for example, that racism doesn't exist, or the idea of that there's certain sexist things that occur, or people being treated differently because of their orientation. I'm not saying that doesn't exist. I'm saying is that there is a lot of things that are caveats to that are being torn open and exaggerated to make it even worse of an issue, and basically perpetuate it into something that people can rally behind. See, I guess I could use this example of the idea of social justice, okay? The social justice warriors, I guess. I mean, I know there's a lot of people that talk about these people, but let's give just a little bit of a description of them. I'm not really want to go into them. This is not to degrade anybody of these groups, but at the same time, to bring light to the fact that you might want to think about these things before you jump on the bandwagon, okay? The idea of these SJWs is the idea of trying to bring social justice of things that they see and things that they hear from other people that seem to be problematic, okay? And there is certain things out there, as I said, that are problematic. I'm not saying certain things don't exist, but it's been exaggerated. And I'm not saying these people exactly exaggerated them. I'm saying there's certain people that have exaggerated them. I'm not saying, I don't know who they were, where they came from, why they did this, but the fact of the matter is they got these people to rally behind them and to believe in it by basically either bringing up flawed evidence, the idea of bringing things to people's attention that really wasn't there, or wasn't there to the degree that they said, as I said, more exaggeration being done, or just things in general. The idea of just bringing things to light that weren't as bad as they said it was, and it only needed a little bit of work, and now they're basically overworking it and basically over pursuing it, and basically this idea and this pressure is being placed on these people to do so, and people keep following it because they believe that this person is telling them the truth. The problem with it is people are flawed and people want power, and this power is what these people crave. I'm not saying that every person is like this, at least in the sense of who started it. But the fact about it is that some of these people know perfectly well these things are not as bad as they make it out to be. And they're doing it just so people will look at them and say, this person knows what they're talking about. This person is somebody to rally behind, even though this person really is nothing more than trying to use them and perpetuate things so they make themselves more powerful. The thing is that then it causes real division, because now that exaggeration has now become a movement which now is being pushed towards things that are not necessarily need to be fixed. And the fact is now they're trying to fix a problem that doesn't really exist, or have created a problem because they try to fix a problem that wasn't there in the first place. That's the thing. And politics goes very much into this, because that's pretty much how politics work. The idea of causing division so that people will rally behind them for an image, for the power. And this is how everything of human nature works. They always crave power. Humans crave power, and they want that type of recognition. It's self-gratification. And the thing is, our country has been going so much into that with current technology trends and everything else. But at the same time is that this idea also goes to the idea of wanting people to look upon them and look for them for leadership. And the thing is that sometimes you need to pick your battles. And the problem is, people that don't seem to understand what battles are worth fighting and what battles are literally just being exaggerated, so that you'll follow it and cause even more division than we already have. For example, we don't even have to go any further than the recent presidential race between Biden and Trump. I mean, did you see how those ads were? How they were trying to rally certain people to their side, trying to basically show the weaknesses or the detriments of the one candidate to the other. It doesn't matter which one did it. Both of them did it in this case, and how bad one was to the other. It just showed that the flaws of those people, and it tried to persuade people to their side of the argument.
and that's why one side had voted for one candidate and the other is for the other candidate. Currently, Biden is considered the president-elect, and Donald Trump is trying to overturn that. But at the same time, is that most of the time he would just concede and say, I lost, and everything is, he's going to be the president. But now there's no civil conversation anymore. There's no civility anymore. Like, we should have just let these things go and let them play their course. But the thing is, we just can't. We want ourselves to be right. We want to be the person of attention. And the thing about it is that even though I do not like either candidates to any extent more than I can throw them, the thing is that Donald Trump's reaction is kind of, a little ridiculous in all accounts. But the thing is, at the same time, is that, I would say that would be a little more ridiculous than it is now. But the thing is it happened back in 2016, where they tried to say that Mr. Trump also was having collusion with Russia to win the election. So it's kind of, I guess, give him his moment of fury, where then it will just end and fall flat on itself. But just saying. Anyway, the thing about it is that they try to rally people to their cause, regardless of how exaggerated a point is. And exaggerations are lies, okay? Exaggerations are basically taking truth and stretching them. And any type of stretch of the truth that's not absolute truth is an exaggeration. And talking about the idea of absolute truth, you shouldn't even have that opinion anymore, considering that subjective morality is the new norm, and that anything that you consider to be a problem, or anything that you consider to be of needing of repair, or anything that you decide that is considered a truth to you, is more important than anybody else's. And that's another reason why this has kind of become a volatile mixture in our country today. I won't really go into the idea of subjective morality and the idea of people's subjective principles in this video, because that's another video for another time. But the idea of subjectivity is something that has definitely been a problem into this idea of this current type of climate with politics and anything else for that matter. Thing is that with the idea of with no absolutes being there, that basically anyone could believe in what they want, and that is where they kind of get the idea of that if my truth is not good enough for you, then you are going to attack me, and I don't like you because you're attacking what I consider to be true. The thing about it is there's no such thing as subjective truth. Subjective truth is an absolute fallacy, and the idea of absolute truth is not. The fact of the matter is that there's an absolute truth of you shall be considerate of other people, or shall love your neighbor as yourself, as you will. And this is true because everyone has this idea of the golden rule. It doesn't matter which place you live in. You could live in India, you could live in the United States, in Britain, even China, and this idea of this principle is still there. It's just the fact of the matter is that people don't want this to be an absolute, and they want whatever they're considered to be true to them as what's the primary source of where their allegiances and their prospects lie. And the problem with this is that because they want to believe in this, then they will basically crush any other people who hold something else dear than what they consider to be what's absolutely necessary. But as I said, I'm not really going to go into this, but it does add to this idea of the political climate. And I know I haven't really talked about the politics, but I'm talking about politics here, as I said, and this idea of what it's been doing, not really about politics itself. I guess we could talk about a little bit of the politics itself, because politics itself is a cornerstone to some of this stuff as well, especially with how basically politics have influenced so many things and have influenced how we get our information as well. See, politics doesn't just affect people in the sense of whose side you should be on. It also affects the information you get from that side. See, the thing is that to go over the people on the other side, they sometimes even use things that should supposed to be non-confrontational, non-biased. They use those type of places to propagate what they consider to be true and diminish the things that they don't consider to be convenient for that truth. I mean, the news outlets are highly biased, for example, and they will give you the news of certain things that they want you to hear, and they'll diminish other things or kind of make it in a negative light for the other things they consider to be problematic. And the thing is, we really just should have the information and the facts, not biases. But people are biased, and unfortunately that applies even to news anchors and the news itself. The thing is, we need to be able to get information and make our own logical conclusions, but the thing is, logic is something that they don't want you to use. See, the idea of using any type of logic in these arguments, regardless of what side you're on, it breaks down completely the argument that they're trying to make. See, the idea of a logic, trying to make a logical conclusion, becomes a detriment, because then you'll learn not just the positive, but the negatives of each side of the argument. I know it sounds like a bad thing, but a lot of times if you found out some of these things that they have lurking in their closet, I guess many of their skeletons they have in there, you would know that some of the stuff that they have done is positively revolting, or even to the respect of contrary to what they say themselves. That's the thing, is if you know logically both sides, all the things of the argument, and make up your own logical conclusion, it would be pretty difficult because of certain things that they've done, and you would know all that information. That's very inconvenient, because they don't want you to make that decision on it. They want to basically make a decision based on what they give you as fact, and well, that's not fact, that's bias, and unfortunately that's a problem for both sides. So don't even go into the fact of one side worse than the other. Both of them have done this. It doesn't matter how long you've been alive at this point. You know that both sides do this. It doesn't matter who is in the current administration, who is in the current White House. It doesn't matter. This has been something that's been going on for years upon years upon years, since this country was founded, in fact. So the fact is that you need to understand that the idea of logic is basically coming out of bias. They want you to have bias, so they make it so that you can't get all the information that you really want to know. And it's kind of funny how that works, because it's kind of goes back into feedback into what I was talking about before, the idea of the division. See, the fact is that because this information is not made public, that those skeletons are taught about by the other side and used in retaliation. And when these people learn about it, then they switch sides to their part of the argument, or to their organization to support them. So the fact of the matter is, when you don't give them all the information and tell them exactly what's going on, then they switch to the other side, because now they found out about the stuff that you didn't want to talk about. So they flip-flop because of that. So it basically is used as a tool to win people over to another side of the argument. It's kind of funny how that all works. And it's kind of sad too, because the fact of the matter is that, you know, it's very detrimental to basically get it from the other side, who basically, you know, for lack of a better word, trumps it up to make it sound worse than it really is, or makes it sound lesser than it actually is. It's a very difficult process, and that's why people are so confused on these things, because it's made to be confusing. It's made to be completely hard to understand things, because the fact is that that's the way they want it, and that's always how it's been. Whoever controls the information also controls the power and the flow of communication. That's power, you know. And I already told you about what people do with power and what they want of it. They covet it. They want it above all things. Knowledge is power, if you don't know. And it doesn't come any clearer than when you know about this. That's the thing, isn't it? The idea of being not understanding enough and coming up with enough of a conclusion to join one side or the other. The fact of the matter is, because of this, it has divided our country. That's pretty much what I want to show you with politics, is that it divides people. It doesn't cause any type of people to mend bridges or come to a compromise. It's all about wanting to basically do nothing more than cause a division so a person will get their sides. And this has a very nasty and very divisive consequence, which is basically causing people to hate one another and not wanting to understand one another. And trust me, if you see social media, which again, as I would say before, I won't be going into, but if you see some of the stuff that people say on social media, including when I discussed this with person of Lewis from Brain Scratch, how volatile it can get to the point where even when you don't want to talk about these things, or should we not talk about it and mend bridges, it becomes a fact that they do not want to hear it. They want to hear what they want to hear. And it's not the fact that they're bad people or they're trying to be, incompetent. which is very far from the truth. They're not being incompetent at all. They're only being able to get information that they have and making a conclusion on that evidence. And that's exactly what these politicians want. They don't want you to come to a conclusion that's an absolute competent conclusion. They want you to come to a subjective conclusion. The idea of, remember I said about subjective truth versus absolute? They want you to come to a subjective conclusion enough to say one side or the other. And when people bring to light the negatives, then they might switch. Or things that they have done that are portrayed in a certain way by news media or outlets of some sort. These things are constantly evolving and constantly causing more and more problems. And I wish people would just know that they're not there for you. Politicians have never been there for you. Don't care about you. They care about how they look, so they'll get reelected and still contain that idea of power. They don't care about what you want. They care about what they want. And that's always what they wanted. Not all politicians might be this way, but it's very hard not to know that a lot of people in power right now, the highest power in the land, I guess you could say, are doing it most of the time for themselves. And I'm not saying, again, that it's everybody, but a lot of them do. And unfortunately, when we have this kind of corruption happening, it just gets worse and worse to more and more of a degree. So why do we listen to these type of people trying to cause this type of division? Well, I guess it's also in human nature to believe in the best of people. They want to think that they're doing the best that they can and we're trying to look out for us. Fortunately, that's not true anymore. And it's not really true of certain people's own innate wants and needs, especially that of power. And, well, it's kind of sad, really, that it's just causing these type of things to occur. And it's really sad that politics is basically a cornerstone in trying to cause this division and basically the idea of breaking down communication, or should I say, the idea of excommunicating people from each other. And I'll be going more into depth of other things as well. I can't really go into that here because then I won't have anything to talk about in my other ones that I'm going to be talking about here. But the next one will be social media and how that is attributed to this as well. But as you know, everybody, my name is Missing Jin. I'll see you all later. Like, comment, and subscribe because you'll never know what will come out of my mouth. Or politicians. Just saying.